guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, Never Mess with a Rancher and a Neighbor. My father's revenge against the city developers. I grew up on a cattle ranch in Texas, a piece of land that had been in my family for generations. We raised Angus cattle, and my father took great pride in his work. He was a man of few words, but he was respected in the community for his honesty and integrity. One day, the city developers came knocking at our door. They wanted to buy a small parcel of our land to build a strip mall. My father politely declined, telling them that our land was not for sale. They left, but we knew they wouldn't give up so easily. A few weeks later, we received a notice from the city that they had declared our back fence line encroaching on their property. They demanded that we move the fence immediately or face legal consequences. My father knew this was a ploy by the developers to acquire our land, so he decided to fight back. He hired a surveyor to check the property lines and found out that the city had made a mistake. The fence line was on our property, and he had the legal documents to prove it. He then filed a lawsuit against the city for their false claim, and it went to court. The trial was a long and arduous process, but my father was determined to win. He presented his evidence and made a compelling case that the city was trying to take our land by fraudulent means. In the end, the judge ruled in our favor, and the city was forced to pay us damages for their false claim. But my father wasn't satisfied with just winning the case. He wanted to send a message to the developers and anyone else who dared to mess with us. So, he used the money from the settlement to build a giant billboard on the edge of our property, facing the city. It read, "Never mess with a rancher and a neighbor." The billboard became a local landmark, and people would often drive by just to see it. It was a symbol of our family's strength and resilience, a reminder that we were not to be trifled with. Years passed, and the city developers moved on to other targets. Our ranch continued to thrive, and my father remained vigilant against any encroachment on our land. But the billboard remained, a testament to his determination and the power of our community. Update. In recent years, the strip mall that the developers had wanted to build on our land has struggled to attract tenants. Many of the businesses that opened there closed down within a few months, and the area has become a haven for vagrants and crime. Meanwhile, our ranch has continued to prosper, and we have expanded our operations to include a vineyard and a bed and breakfast. The billboard still stands, a reminder to all who pass by that we are proud ranchers who will defend our land and our community. The next story is titled, A Matter of Convenience. So, my neighbor, N, directly across the street has a friend, Jim. Jim has a big blue truck that he likes to park in the spot directly in front of our house when he comes to visit, which is most days since they're both retired and like to work on N's car projects in his driveway together. I wouldn't care about the parking, which is totally free and not restricted, except 1. Our driveway only has 2 spaces, but we have 3 cars for reasons. My wife and I like to park one on the street in front of our house, which makes it really easy to stop and go, get the kids and groceries in and out, etc. It's rare both these spots are taken, and the next closest free street parking is 3 blocks away. Second reason, it's such a big truck that he has to park it with 2 wheels on the curb, which blocks a third of the sidewalk and looks trashy. We've had dog walkers and joggers bang on our door and complain we're blocking the sidewalk. I just point across the street and say, "Not my truck." Third reason, whenever he's getting ready to leave, he'll remote start the truck and it backfires, loud, scaring my kids, and then he'll just leave it rumbling away loudly belching smoke for another 30 minutes while he decides to have another beer. And most important, there is an exact same unrestricted, free parking spot right in front of my neighbor's house. So just kind of generally bothersome. So, one day when he pulls up, I catch him before he crosses the street. Me. "Hey Jim, can I ask you a big favor? Would it be a huge deal if you parked on N's side of the street? It would help us both out. With our kids and jobs, it." Jim grumbles, "No. I come from the east and it's convenient to me." So, he's parking on our side because he drives westward to get here and doesn't want to turn around? Me. "Well Jim, you can make a legal U-turn right here. Or pull into the lot next door and whip around. It would make life more convenient for both of us." Jim. "I'll park where I want." "It ain't your driveway, and I don't see any reserved signs." And he's gone. Okay. That night I take the front spot after he leaves. I drive my second car across the street and park it in front of N's house in the spot I offered Jim. In the morning my wife takes the third car to work. It's my day off, so I decide to do some yard work out front. I hear Jim's truck rumbling up the road. He slows and stops in the street, exasperated. He rolls down the passenger window and starts yelling, but I can't hear it over his roaring engine. I do the exaggerated "I can't hear anything" gesture, and he pulls up illegally onto the curb. Me. "Hey Jim. Jim. Why the hell would you take both spots when you only need one?" Me. "Oh. Well, see, I got this job where I come from the east. And my new job, well, I come from the west. So, it's convenient to me." Jim. But you can't just take 2 street spots. You got 2 empty spots in this driveway." Me. "Well, Jim," I say, "it ain't your driveway, and I don't see any reserved signs. So, I guess I'll park where I want." Jim pulls off furious, and 15 minutes later I see him trudging up to neighbor's house muttering curses in my direction. You want to make that parking deal, Jim? Turns out he did want to make that deal. The next story is titled, "Try to Steal My Legally Rented Parking Spot? Enjoy Being Unemployed." This happened last night. I am now in a good enough spot to actually post this. I'm not quite sure if it qualifies as pro, but it definitely isn't petty. I am a professional driver. As such, on the roads in the US, there are different truck stops throughout the country that has a pay-to-park system, usually about 10 to 20% of the lot marked off as reserved, with each space running from $15 to $25. The truck stops where this took place had parking for $17, which is relatively cheap, for a guaranteed spot. The spots are reserved for 24 hours, starting at 4 p.m. local time, and extending to 3 p.m. the following afternoon. I knew that I would have a late-night delivery, so I came to the truck stop around 3:30, and paid for a reserve spot. I told the manager on duty that I had a delivery up the road that night, and would be back once delivery was completed, but should still be able to clear out the spot by the next afternoon, today. She told me that this was okay, and she would mark the spot as sold when I left. That way, if someone else comes in trying to reserve that spot, she could consult her notes, and deny the sale. 11:15 p.m. rolls around, I take off for my delivery. I don't get out of that facility until 2:30 a.m. the next morning, this morning. So, I groggily drive back to the truck stop to reclaim my paid-for spot, only to find that the reserved parking spaces are all full. I call the manager on duty, and after giving her my info, inform her that all the spots are full, and that someone has parked in a spot and hasn't paid for it. She sends her other employee out to start checking trucks. The culprit was from a company that is known for their bright orange trailers, and he was a company driver. The other employee starts banging on his door to inform him that he is parked illegally, and he has to move. Meanwhile, I can see the commotion from my mirror, with my vantage point in the fuel island, where I had been instructed to temporarily park. The driver answers the door with a bottle of Heineken in one hand, and some sort of smoking implements in another. I know what it is, but for the sake of the mods, I'm not gonna say it. I decided to roll down the window to hear the commotion, and I hear the employee tell the driver to either move, or he will get the towing company and police involved. This driver is flat out irate that someone had the audacity to tell him where he can and cannot park, so he slams the door on the employee, threatening him. Employee calls the police and tow company, and the police show up first. I had worked for this company before, so I know their policies, and more importantly, what they can and cannot have in their trucks. Alcoholic beverages are not allowed in the cab. Anything that isn't a cigarette or a cigar and a lighter, also, not allowed. The coup de grace, a pew-pew, of any kind, absolutely not allowed, and especially not allowed loaded. This driver had all that, and some other not-so-legal substances in his cab, so he was hauled away in cuffs. His truck was hauled away on a wrecker. I made a call after the commotion died down to the company safety director and informed them that their rig will be in an impound lot, and their driver is going to jail over the not-so-legal stuff he had in his truck. She thanked me, and said that he will definitely lose his job, especially over the alcohol and the other not-so-legal stuff. I guess he played the screw around and find out card, and it bit him in his career. The next story is titled, Karen's Husband Gets Slapped with Summons. So, this weekend was pure entertainment. I love living in a close-knit town where we have community events all the time. Some are random like this one. We got together and volunteered our kids to clean the parks and trail they threw trash in. While they were cleaning, I joined a couple of parents, and we cleared some half-fallen trees so they wouldn't be a hazard anymore. Park service were there, and the town code enforcer showed up in uniform with his kids. This is very important. He of course came in uniform because he is running for office forever. He led the kids around the park picking up trash, sweeping debris and racking up leaves. So, as we were clearing the debris along the trail by Karen's house, a police officer comes by led by Karen's weasel of a husband. Let's call him Kevin. Karen was locked up and I guess he figured he had to do her work. He apparently called them and wanted them to see the hoodlums with weapons on the trail and the men destroying the forest. The police officer wrote him a ticket for filing a false police report and left telling him to not call again. A few hours later the code enforcer, CE, came down the trail with a group of kids picking up trash and he saw the condition of Karen's fence. He told the kids he wanted it all picked up and they got to work. Kevin came out in a huff. He screamed that they need to get off his property. I saw a few parents getting ready to tell him off when the code enforcer bellowed, "You heard him, kids, get out of there." He then walked up to Kevin with the biggest grin I ever seen in my life. He pulled out his summons book and started writing. The conversation went as follows. CE. You have 1 week to clean this up as you are in violation of our town's Clean and Pristine Act. Kevin looked pissed, staring blankly. CE. This is your fence, is it not? Kevin. Yes, but those little demons are the ones who dropped that trash there. CE. Well, those kids were cleaning it up, but you don't want them on your property. I cannot allow them to trespass as you see I am on duty today. And since I am on duty, I must enforce the clean and pertinent order. Now if you wish to give them permission to be on your property, they will clean up the trash or you can do it yourself. Kevin. Let the little bastards clean it. Duck you. I stood there laughing with the dads as I cannot describe the level of confusion on Kevin's face during the entire exchange. The code enforcer stood there with the biggest shit-eating grin I have ever seen as Kevin stormed off to his house. One of the moms piped up, "I thought you said you weren't actually working today." The code enforcer grinned. I couldn't pass up an opportunity to shut that guy down hard. We all laughed and got back to cleaning. The kids picked up all the trash on his property. We saw Kevin a few more times, mostly to come out curse about how terrible the kids are. Kevin got into an argument with one of the moms, but my daughter didn't hear what they said, and I was at the other end of the trail. When it was all done, we had a big barbecue party to celebrate the clean park and to reward the kids for their hard work. Too bad Kevin is such a sourpuss, we would have invited him. Side note. Most of the kids confessed to throwing the trash on Karen's property. My daughter confessed to it as well as apologizing for contributing to the mess. Most of the kids weren't willing participants, but a few threats of lost video games and TV privileges sure do work wonders. The last story is titled, I Got Back at the Karen in My Line. I was a grocery checker in the 90s. One day around noon I was working the 10 items or less, cash-only express line that was used by many people who were just grabbing a quick sandwich for lunch, so it was important to keep out people who had carts full of groceries. There was one other regular check stand open across from me that had one person being checked out with a large cart full. I didn't have anyone in my line at the time. Karen pulls up to the other check stand with a heaping cart and notices me standing there. She asks if I can check her out. I tell her, no, I'm sorry, I have to be available for people grabbing lunch. Over the next 30 seconds she just stared at me and then pulled her cart up to my check stand and started putting all of her things on my check stand and says, "You're not doing anything, you can check me out." So, I was kind of stuck, so I tried to check her out as fast as I could and didn't say much, and wouldn't you know it, pretty soon I had a line of about 5 people standing there with their sandwiches and cokes glaring at me. Remember, it was a cash lane, so as I am finishing her order Karen takes out her checkbook and writes a check. Mind you, she didn't start writing it until I was about done. More delay. This was her big mistake. Her address was on the check. So, on my lunch break I got the subscription cards from all the magazines and proceeded to subscribe her to just about every magazine we carried, and I always checked the 2 years, bill me later option. I even signed her up for the Columbia Music Club and I picked the very worst records. Weeks later, when she started getting all of the mags and bills for them, there is no way she would connect it to the checker she was rude to. I was probably one in a long string of cashiers she was rude to. Winner, me. Thank you for listening.